Hello everyone, we are live yet again. I'm kind of getting myself geared up and ready to roll. We're going to be doing one of my authors chats of the week, and I'll keep my eye out for my co-host. I saw him on his own live just a little bit ago, so let me go see if he is ready to rock and roll, and we'll get things going. We'll be talking about books, writing, publishing, and everything in between. I'm going to skim down just to see if I don't see him yet. And we'll be, aha, there we are. Okay, let's see.
Here we are.
Hello.
Hey, Catherine.
How are you?
I'm doing good. I've been plugging this in my live for the past hour, so hopefully we'll get a bunch of people to come over and hang out with us.
Fantastic. And how are you, and how is everything going wherever you live in the world?
I am on Long Island, New York. It's today was our first sunny day in about 8 months.
Oh, wow.
So I did the best I could to spend a few moments outside. Other than that, things are great.
Fantastic. And I don't know if you've ever listened to any of my live chats, but since you're my co-host today, I will let you kick things off by introducing yourself and what you write.
Okay, my name's Michael Laimo. I spent 30 years writing horror, and you can see right here, this shelf right here and this shelf right here, that's my brag shelf. That's one of everything I've ever published in my horror writing career.
Wow.
Yeah, a lot of stuff there. As you can see, I started like right there. These are like small press journals.
Mm-hmm.
This is what that was my training ground. And then I graduated into bigger and better things. And then the top right here, from here over, those are all novels, different editions, foreign editions, things like that. But after doing that, I decided I wanted to try something completely different. And I wrote an erotic thriller, and I'm glad I did. Book is doing very, very well. Fantastic reviews, great sales, and I'm working on book 2 right now. So all my horror writing fans, they're like, does that mean you're not writing horror anymore? And I was like, well, yeah, at least for now.
Fair enough. I was going to ask that if you were taking a temporary break, or if you decided to move on to something just completely new from now on.
Yeah, I mean, right now I'm hyper focused on the next book, and that's what I'm doing right now. So for right now, I'm a thriller writer. But I get asked to submit stories to anthologies, things like that, and most of the time they're horror. Mm-hmm. And so so I'll just stop what I'm doing and pen a quick story.
Well, let's talk a little bit about your horror first, and then we'll get back to your new thrillers. But what was it that just called to you for the horror genre in the beginning?
Mm-hmm. Always been a big horror fan since I'm a little kid. I was immediately attracted to, the Universal monsters, and it just flourished from there. So all through my teen years, I read a ton of horror. Started with Alfred Hitchcock and those types of books, and then I found Stephen King and started devouring all his stuff. And then as in the 90s, I got a job commuting into New York City from Long Island. So I had a 1-hour trip each way, and I was reading everything by Clive Barker, Stephen King, Robert McCammon, Dean Koontz, and I just thought it might be fun to try this myself. So I bought it, not knowing anything about the craft, anything about the business, and I bought a notebook, which is right here. And I filled this thing with just short stories. The whole thing is just completely filled with handwritten short stories. And that's what I did for, a year. Mm-hmm. Wrote in a notebook. And then eventually I transferred these to typewriter. And then I started finding out, how I can submit to magazines and periodicals. And that's what these guys are right here, these little small press journals. They were a great training ground for me. Yeah. So, and that's...
sorry.
Continue. Yeah, that's how it started, and I haven't stopped since.
I was going to say, when people are trained, it's interesting because you could approach it 2 ways when you start writing. You could jump into novels in series, kind of like I did, or start with the short story side of things. And both of them have different challenges and different perks to them. Oh, yes. And I know for me, I'm working backwards, where I'm trying to be able to challenge myself to write more and more short stories, because it is an art form to tell a succinct story in a way that's captivating and rich and has depth, but in, that relatively few words. So,
Yeah, yeah. When I was a young writer, there were a lot of seasoned authors that I met at my first World Horror Convention, and they offered me great advice. And one of them was Tom Piccirilli. He was a thriller slash horror writer. He's sadly no longer with us. But he said to me, "Don't start your first novel until you find your voice, and you'll know." I said, "Well, how do I know when I find my voice?" He said, "You'll know." He said, "It's like playing an instrument. You got to practice to be good. Write a lot of short stories." Because you're committing yourself to only something that's going to take 2 weeks instead of 2 years to write.
that's true.
And he was right. And I wrote probably 30 to 40 short stories. I published half of them. And then I started my first novel at that point. And I was writing for 5, 6 years before I started my first novel.
Now, are all your novels up until your new ones independent, or do you have some small series or duologies, or how were your earlier novels kind of arranged?
My earlier novels, I was actually traditionally published in the mass market, and I did 6 novels with Leisure Books. This was my bestseller right here, Deep into Darkness.
Very nice.
And this paperback right here sold about 30,000 copies.
Wow.
It was nominated for the Bram Stoker Award. I lost to Stephen King, and it was made into a feature film.
Wow, that's fantastic.
Yeah, so this book did really well for me. But I did 6 paperbacks with Leisure Books, and then I was publishing a lot of short stories in the mass market too, in like anthologies like this. Like Walk on the Dark Side, an anthology of 24 horror stories. So I published in a lot of books like this, or a lot, maybe 7 or 8 of them. And then late 2000s, smartphones came along. People stopped reading. Barnes and Noble went out. Not Barnes and Noble. Borders went out of business. Walden Books, B. Dalton, they all went out of business. And then my publisher went out of business.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there I was without a book deal. So some of my contemporaries at the time that were with me, Leisure Books, went on to great things. So you're talking about a pool of about 100 authors under the Leisure Books banner. Sarah Pinborough, who went on to do Behind Her Eyes. Tim Levin, who went on to do The Silence, which was made into a Netflix film. Tim Wagner, he does a lot of he just did all the Terrifier and Maxine books. So so some of my contemporaries went on to great things. I decided, I'm going to take a break. I worked on the 2 movies, and that was about 4 years. And then after that, I kind of dropped writing for a little bit to teach myself how to play guitar.
Hey, I love that.
I lost interest in the writing and just thought, you know what, I can go on YouTube and teach myself how to play guitar. And I did that for about 5 years. I just focused on guitar. I was playing in a band, pandemic hit, and the gigs went away. I was like, all right, so I got all this free time on my hand. I guess it's time to write another novel. And if the pandemic didn't hit, I probably would not have written this book because, so something good came out of it. And glad I did.
It is interesting because there are a lot of authors who either their careers just started because of the pandemic, and because a lot of people found they had a lot of extra time and they were trying to figure out how to fill it. And be it some of the people I've talked to who have always wanted to write but never had a reason to, they took that that opportunity, or other people who just didn't have the time and now they had it. So it is interesting that people especially in the arts of physical, like the books as well as visual arts, had a lot of motivation and creativity kind of bloom because of a relatively bad situation. So I guess for you, what ended up being a good thing, because that switched you over to your new genre. And you said you have a sequel, so this one's going to be a series?
I hope. That's the plan. I before I committed myself to a second book, I was very unsure. When I put this book out, it was completely different than anything I'd ever done before. That was the first thing. The second thing is it's very different than anything else that's out there because it's a romance novel from the first person perspective of the male. Okay. And he's that guy, we all know a guy like that. He's I I don't want to call him chauvinistic. He comes across that way at the beginning, and I did that purposefully because there was good reason for it. And you find out why later on. But I was afraid that readers might misunderstand him and not accept the book at, face value. But some people have, a few. I got a few 1-star reviews saying that my main character gave him the ick. But I kind of looked at that as a compliment because mostly everybody has really embraced the story, the characters, everything about it. And at the end of the day, now I'm truly confident, based on the reviews I've gotten and most of the feedback that I've gotten, that and sales too, that I feel like I've got something special, and that's what really gave me the impetus to start that second book. And we were just talking about that in my live. I'm probably about halfway done with it. So I'm hoping by the end of the year, hopefully, I do this it's a part-time thing, I have a day job. So it's just, finding time. But I'm hoping by the end of the year, we'll see that second book done.
That'll be fantastic. And are you going to try to release it then next year? Or how do you kind of cycle out?
The publisher's already drooling for it.
That's good.
Yeah, it's a good problem to have. Which was really nice. My existing publisher, because of the success of Misconnection, they obtained the rights to all my former Leisure Books titles, and they re-released them in beautiful new paperbacks. So, like here's Deep in the Darkness. So these are the new editions, and these are what's been selling at fan shows and TikTok Shop and so forth.
It is amazing that when people re-release or release a book with maybe an alternative cover or a new cover, how that will just spike sales because there are fads and trends just visually that appeal to us. And so when you have a re-release or being able to relaunch it with a new cover, all of a sudden you'll kind of catch different people's attention and start building your readership all over again.
And that's exactly what's happening. But I'm finding readers outside of the horror community now. Because that's not my audience anymore. So it's now the people that have read Misconnection, they just want to read my stuff because they really liked it and they want to read some stuff. And like Deep in the Darkness, maybe we sold a couple hundred copies, of the new edition since it's been out. But that's a couple hundred more readers that I didn't have before that love that book now.
That's true. And that's a very special thing because not every author has that success where you jump genres and then you have people willing to go with you whichever way and kind of find you in one genre and then read all of your other work or vice versa, because there are definitely people who are so niched what they like, and that's great. You like what you like, but to have those super fans that will follow you wherever you want to go, that's phenomenal.
It's been a lot of fun. Yeah, I've made a lot of great friends here on, and it's because of Book Talk. It's all because of Book Talk. My daughter got me onto TikTok about a year ago. She says, "Dad, you got a new book coming out. You should just," she goes, "How are you going to promote it?" And I said, "I'm going to go on my website and Facebook." And she's like, "No, you gotta get on TikTok and start following book talkers and things." And it was a big learning curve.
Yes.
But it's really funny. You can see the videos before Misconnection came out all have 200 to 300 views. And then after Misconnection came out, they're all like between 3,000 and 5,000 views.
That's fantastic.
So it really shows me that the book has definitely made some sort of impact with readers.
And I know on this platform, it's one of the things that when you're talking about learning curves for both the reader side as well as the writing side, you have to niche yourself down and kind of figure out that, the right handles in order to get yourself in front of the right audience, because a lot of people are shown romance first, which is a huge aspect of the book talk community. But when you write things that aren't romance, it does take a little while for you to find that community. But when you do find it, they're so avid and supportive because they're looking for what you have to offer. So that's great that you found it with your new release.
Yes, and also there are so many people on Book Talk who really enjoy supporting independent authors.
Oh, yeah.
And it really blows my mind how there are so few authors on here doing it. When I say few, I go on TikTok Live, I'll see 7 or 8 authors, hawking their books, and that's it. And they could be different ones every time, but there should be. It's like one of my friends said. He goes, It was best kept secret that's not a secret. You know, Adam Caesar. I don't know if you've seen him. He did Clown on a Cornfield.
I have not. I've not been able to talk with him, but I've not. I don't think I've followed him yet. So
Yeah, he hit it big. He's got an A-list movie coming out. So proud. Yeah, I'm very happy for him. But you know, when he was learning the craft, he was reading my books. You know, so it's pretty wild. Pretty wild. Yeah.
and it's also lovely when you have a community, and again, you inspire someone else, and someone else is inspiring you, and you kind of all kind of help bolster each other to be the best authors you can be, and depending on your niche and how you develop your other friendships in the bookish community, some will actually literally get on these lives and start talking about your books along with their own, and it's a great thing.
Oh yeah, it's nice. It's nice. I love to at least once in every live, someone will come in and say, I'm always like this with the book, holding it up. So when people scroll by, they see the book, they stop. But if I have at least one person come in and say, oh, I saw that book somewhere. I saw that posted, on Facebook or on my Facebook group. What's it about? And every live that I do, I find new readers. Fantastic.
And that's one of the things that I like doing these kind of live chats with other authors, because maybe someone from my side will discover you and vice versa. It's a community, and we're all trying to help each other, because readers, especially the avid readers, they can read a book in a day. Some can, and they're always looking for something new. So it's always nice to be able to share and talk about each other's work. Now, your book, Misconnection, what inspired you to make the jump now into this kind of recent romantic thriller and with first person male perspective? What was it that made you decide, hey, I want to write this kind of a story?
So I had actually started another horror novel, and I was about 10,000 words in, and I really liked the idea of it, but I wasn't feeling it. I wasn't excited about it. Mm-hmm. And so I watched the TV show You that was on Netflix.
Oh, yeah.
And then I was like, oh, this is based on a book. And I read the books, and I really liked the idea, what the author did by telling the story from the first-person perspective of the anti-hero, where you hear all his twisted thoughts. I was like, I want to do that. Okay, so I kind of took my guy. He's not the anti-hero yet at the beginning of the book, but it's really the story about how he becomes an anti-hero.
I love that.
So I kind of backtracked a little bit. I gave him 3 voices in his head, not just one. And I put him in, I like to say this during my lives, I put him in a Harlan Coben novel with lots of twists and turns. And pretty much that's what Misconnection is, with a lot of humor, too. There's definitely a lot of humor in the book. But I wanted it to be completely different than what I was reading. I was reading Frida books and, all the popular thrillers that were out there now. And I just wanted it to have a different pacing, a different voice, a different setup. I wanted it to be unique. And I think I did that with the book. Unfortunately, there were no literary agents who agreed with me. I tried that for about a year, and that didn't. I was a little disappointed. Given my track record, I thought somebody would be willing to take me on with a new book. Didn't happen. So, but I fell into graces with Crossword Press, and they're kind of like a mid-tier publisher. They're not small press. They've got about 300 authors in their stable. So they're fairly large, but they're royalty only paying, and they don't have Ingram distribution. So we looked into it for Ingram distribution for Misconnection. It was too much of a financial risk. For the publisher, for myself, he wasn't willing to do it. I certainly wasn't willing to take the risk. You're talking a big financial risk if your books don't sell. So I said, no. I said, I'll just promote it myself, and I'll pound the pavement, and I believe in this book, and I think it'll take off. I almost did. In August was a big month last year. The book sold over 700 copies just in the month of August, and the videos were popping up everywhere on TikTok, and I was like, okay, this is it. It's going to go viral, and then it didn't. So, but I haven't given up. I'm still out there, still finding new readers every day, and keep my fingers crossed, hope for the best.
And when you write series, one nice thing is when you release the next book of a series, it also helps spike up the first book, because now everybody's like, wait, I want to get into that, but there's a first book. And right. So you'll see a spike in sales in that one. So hopefully, you never know, maybe your launch of your second one will be what your first book needs in order to kick that one off, because that does happen.
That's definitely crossed my mind for sure. Yeah,
that does happen. So with I know for me, I'm an indie author, and so all the promotion is on my shoulders, and that's why I'm doing stuff like this, and I'm going to events. I'm doing a con this weekend. What kind of stuff do you like to do in order to reach readers? I know you were saying that you're on here and doing lives. How else are you trying to find readers? Do you go to live events or hub on other socials, or what's your plan?
So backtracking to my first novel, Atmosphere, long story short is I basically got on a plane and flew from New York to Denver, Colorado to attend a 30-minute pitch session with the editor from Leisure Books. I was doing things like that. I was going to writers' conferences, trying to rub shoulders with the right people, just brown-nosing anybody I could that meant something in the industry. And this was for horror writing. And it was a little easier. It was a little bit of a smaller community, not like the thriller community, which is massive. So I met a lot of the right people. And because of all the networking, I was publishing a lot of work and getting paid for it. So I was happy about that. Things are different nowadays. And because I'm not writing horror much anymore, I'm kind of looking for more online opportunities. So doing things like this, meeting with book clubs, doing TikTok, posting on all my socials. I'm going in 2 weeks to horror cons, fan conventions, where there's just tons and tons of foot traffic. And I'll have my books laid out. And I've done about 3 or 4 so far. And you sell anywhere from 50 to 80 books during a 2-day weekend. So that's fun too. That's worth it. So I've been doing more of that, more of the fan conventions, actually selling books as opposed to rubbing shoulders with contemporaries and people like that. But, maybe next year, we'll see.
No, I mean, that's the kind of thing, like, I like doing those conventions, and again, like you said, the fan events, because you never know who you're going to meet, and you can still meet contemporaries, and like you said, you can meet other authors, because there are definitely going to be other authors selling at those events, and a lot of times you'll have different kind of publishers there, and maybe not agents necessarily, but editors and other people in that the bookish field that you may be able to utilize and meet and connect with and help each other and bolster each other. But it is really nice being able to talk to people face to face, because you never know who's gonna all of a sudden discover you and become, as we talked about a little earlier, one of those super fans that you sell. It's easier to sell 10 books to one person than 1 book to 10 people. So if you get that fan, and that fan goes and reads throughout all your books, that's great. And you have a number of them.
I've had at least a dozen people do that here on TikTok Shop, that they've collected all my stuff. They've made videos. This is my Michael Laimo bookshelf. And I'm like,
I love that.
That feels good. That feels good.
Do you sign your books when you send them out to the TikTok Shop, or how?
Yeah, I personalize them to the person
That's great.
that buys the book. I usually go by what's on the mailing label, unless they tell me otherwise. But I personalize, inscribe it with something a little witty or clever, and then sign it. And I always send them out with a signed bookmark too.
That's great. I love that. And I could definitely see people starting to collect that, because I know I've been, ever since being on Book Talk, I've started building out my signed copy collection from other people I've met on here, because it's just that much more personal and special and enjoyable when you have that kind of signed copy. So I love that.
I have a whole bookshelf filled with signed paperbacks, like the small paperbacks. So back in the 90s and the 2000s, this is how paperbacks were published, and those small ones. These guys right here.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So I've got a whole bookshelf filled with signed copies from all my writer friends that I used to see at all the writer conventions. Yeah, and I'm sure they have mine too.
That's great. Oh, yeah. Book swaps. I also love swapping books with other authors. Those are another fun thing to do. But that is great. With this new series coming out, you said you're about halfway through the second one. Do you have any clue of how long a series you're trying to aim for, or are you just going to write until inspiration starts fading?
Yeah, at least a trilogy. I got a basic idea for the third book. I got to get there first.
Oh, yes.
So the first book is kind of a learning about the characters, who they are, their relationships with one another.
Mhm.
And then the second book picks up right where the first, this is a little bit of a cliffhanger. And so the second book picks up right where the first one leaves off. And it tells a completely different story. Same
Okay.
characters with some new characters, but a completely different story. So it's not another misconnection. It's other people's homes. That's what it's going to be called.
I like that.
Yeah.
And with these building out characters, with the first one you said it does have some romance in it. So obviously there's at least two. How many main characters do you start out with, despite the fact that I know you have the one POV character?
There are four main characters, and then there's two or three secondary characters that are important. And they will play roles in the second book as well.
Very nice.
Yes, for the most part.
Are you enjoying being able to stick with characters throughout multiple books? Because I know for horror, a lot of times you have these independent novels, they're phenomenal and great, but when you're done with it, then you move on to another character and a new story. So how do you like being able to stick with a character beyond just one book?
I did it once before with Deep into Darkness. I wrote a sequel called Return to Darkness, where we stuck with the main character for the second book. Mm-hmm. With Misconnection, so here's the thing. I wrote horror for 30 years, and now I got a horror voice that is ingrained in me. So that first draft of Misconnection, even though I wanted it to be a thriller, it read like a horror novel. It was 106,000 words. It was bloated. It needed TLC. So I spent, 15 months editing it and polishing it and fine-tuning it and making sure that every word was placed properly in it, and by the time I was done, it went down to 92,000 words from 106,000 words. So I cut 14,000 words out. I didn't think about it. For a part-time writer, that's 3 months worth of work. Cut it out, completely gone.
Wow.
But it wasn't needed. It slowed the book down. I wanted it to be really fast-paced. I wanted it to be in that thriller voice. But here's the thing now. Now that I'm writing the second book, I don't have that challenge of changing my voice, because now that thriller voice from Misconnection, Peter's voice, is ingrained in me. When I start that second book now, it's a little easier. It's coming. Yeah, it's flowing much. Yeah, I was able to just start writing it right off the bat, where the editing process won't be as intense and severe as it was in the first book.
And I will have to say, as someone who likes to write series, there is that, and that is a big benefit, because once you know the characters, and I write high fantasy, so second world fantasy. So once I develop the world and it's kind of the magic systems and they're all set, it's easier to continue that on versus starting from scratch. So
it must be, especially for fantasy.
Yeah, depending on the fantasy and how much world building you have to do behind the scenes. If you are one of those who just writes the one book, kudos to you. That's a lot of work each time, but that's one of the many reasons why I like writing series. I did see a question popping up inquiring about book festivals. I'm not exactly sure if you're pertaining to anything I posted before. For this weekend, I will be attending one called Jordan Con, based off Robert Jordan, Wheel of Time, in the Atlanta area. So that's the one I'll be attending next, but there are others throughout the year that I'll also be going to. And you mentioned your way that you're going to start going to, again, fan cons. Did you have one scheduled? I thought you mentioned that little.
Yes, May 3rd and 4th. So not this weekend, but next weekend. I will be at Connecticut Horror Fest. And I'll be there with my daughter, who's a horror artist. She actually did the cover for a couple of my books. She did this cover for Dreadful Things.
Nice.
So she'll be there selling prints and little sculptures that she does. And we've done this convention together before, and we've had a lot of fun. So, so we'll be there together, not this weekend, next weekend, Connecticut Horror Fest.
That's great. Yeah, no, I love going to, especially finding new festivals that are ones that are niched in whatever genre you're writing, because that's where you really find a bunch of avid readers and fans of, again, the genre, the theme, and it's easier to sell someone who's already interested in, let's say, horror than just someone off the cuff and be like, do you like this? So,
I
but
would like to try a book convention,
mhm.
not horror theme, no theme, just independent books convention, independent author convention. They got to be out there. I would love to try something like that where I'm kind of like socializing with other authors that write in all different types of genres. I think that would be fun.
I know here, living in Georgia, so around the Atlanta area, there are literary festivals where they kind of do that. And for either a day or the weekend, they'll have a bunch of authors representing their work there and then pulling interest of like readers of all sorts to go through. I don't know if any particular ones that are truly cons, because that's a little different when you're a convention. Usually you have panels and potentially classes and things like that. But as far as the festivals go, if you look for literary festivals, you can find stuff that you could be selling for the weekend and still meeting people face to face.
Yeah, I would love to try something like that.
And I'm sure up in your area, you have to have a number.
You would think. I mean, I'm in New York, and I've done a lot of searching, and haven't really found anything. I mean, there's one. I think maybe there's one in the fall in Brooklyn, but I might look into that. But there's one in Williamsburg, Virginia, called AuthorCon.
Oh,
that
sounds weird.
A lot of my friends from the old World Horror Con days are now doing that one, and they always say to me, "How come you're not at AuthorCon? You got to come to AuthorCon." So I might do that next year. I know the sign up for a table. I've been watching like videos from it, and to me it looks like it's just a lot of authors selling each other or trading books. For the whole weekend. It doesn't look like there's a lot of outside like fans coming in, and I want to find something that has a little bit of both.
That's fair. I mean, with the title of or the name of AuthorCon, it almost sounds like it's meant for authors versus authors selling and meeting readers. So maybe it needs some rebranding, and that would change things. But the brand is a big thing. But it's still, that would be a fun thing to try. You never know. And then, hey, if it works, great. You can come back. And if not, you now know, and you have tried it.
I'm looking at the timing of it, and I was like, you know what? The second book might be out, right before that. So it might be good timing for me to do that. So possibly. We'll see. But I want to start doing more events, conventions, and so forth now that I'm active again in the industry.
And for your upcoming sequel, are you planning to do anything special for the launch? Because some authors go big, others are kind of like me sometimes, and it's just a little tired. I don't want to do anything else anymore. But what are you planning, if anything, to do for it?
I just pound the pavement on social media. Get people excited for it. Look for pre-orders. I'm at that point. I'm like in full salesman mode. And I just try to get the word out there to as many people, set up events, in-person events, if possible, There's a new Barnes & Noble that just opened near me, and I've already written them twice, and they haven't gotten back to me, and I see all these other authors there, but they're like traditionally published authors, so I know sometimes the Barnes & Nobles will kind of snub you if you're independent. It depends on the CRM, the manager. Yeah, it depends on what they like. I've had Barnes & Noble managers come into my live and say, I love this book. I'm gonna order it and put it in my store, put it on my shelves. I've had a couple people do that. A couple Barnes & Noble people do that, where they have the ability to do that. They don't have to like adhere to what corporate wants them to do. So
maybe also you could always wander, walk in one day and just say, hey,
I'm not shy. Yeah, I am not shy. I definitely do that. My friend Sarah Pinborough from Behind Her Eyes, she's from London, and she's doing a book signing at Barnes & Noble next town over next month. So I was so excited about that because it's been years since I've seen her. While you're there, you just try to talk to the right people.
Love that. And I did see a question pop up about are we self-published? How do you identify, since you said you're about a mid-size press?
Yes. Crossroad Press is the name of the publisher. You asking about my publisher?
Yes. I'm asking how do you identify since you use a mid-size press, as someone was asking.
Yeah. So Crossroad Press, they have an interesting story. They started out doing just ebooks and audiobooks for paperbacks that were published in the 1990s and the 2000s that were only published in paperback. So they obtained the rights to Deep into Darkness. They did an ebook and audiobook for it.
Nice.
I did that for all my books. So I had 9 books with them in ebook. I've got 8 in audio. But they started about 3 years ago, started doing paperbacks and opened up. The timing was like perfect because when I was getting discouraged with all the literary agencies saying no, they posted something about we're doing original paperbacks now. We're going to be doing one a month for them, and I was just like, I was very friendly with them, and I was like, I got this book. It's not a horror novel. I know you stick with horror. Can I send it to you? And I sent it to them, and 3 days later, they got back to me and said, yeah, we want to publish this.
Great.
Yeah, I was like, all right, that's great. That was like a weight off my shoulders, because I spent a year trying to start at the top and work my way down. And, I had, major book deal eyes in my head because I liked my book. I felt like it was a good book that people would relate to it. And, it didn't happen right away. But now that it's out, and I'm getting more and more people reading it. It's taken a lot of work. I'm not going to give up. I've come this far. I'm going to keep going, keep trying, and keep my fingers crossed. Hope it, like you said, maybe when the second book comes out, it'll take that to really, really help it take off.
And sometimes that's all you need. And I guess to answer the question myself, I personally am a self-published author at this moment. I am one that's interested if I get an opportunity to hybridize, which means releasing certain books through some kind of publishing house, be it small, mid, or the big ones. But I'll keep that open. But right now I'm self-published, and I actually really enjoyed it. So a little bit of both worlds here tonight.
What could happen? This happened with Nick Roberts, who I think even Verity was self-published. And that book took off on Book Talk, and that's how Colleen Hoover got her big deal. And it happened with Nick Roberts, too. He published with a very small press, even smaller than Crossroad. And the most they'd ever sold, this book company, the most they ever sold of any one title was 150, 200 copies. They were really small press. Mm-hmm. And his book took off, went viral. It's called The Last Exorcist. It was a horror novel. And he got a big book deal out of it.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's amazing.
So if your self-published book, your independent book goes viral, you will get a big book deal. Because it's all about dollars and cents.
And that's the thing is, like, it's amazing how many people I've met that have had pitches of people offering them, and a lot of people take them up because that's what they want. And then I've had people turn them down because they make more money selling indie and they know how to do it and they're comfortable with it.
Right.
It's all what you want out of it. And like I said, for me, I'm just enjoying the way I've been doing it, and I don't mind to change things up in the future, but it's, for me, fun.
Yeah, look, it'll be a lifelong hobby for you, just like it is for me.
Well, I am a full-time author and artist, so it is my
job. Sorry, my apologies.
It is more than a hobby, but that's why I'm on.
So this is your full-time job. You write, you sit down, you write every day.
Write every day, and between writing and painting, I do a little bit of both. So
I'm envious. Yeah, that's my dream in life, is to be able to just sit at the desk at 9 a.m. and just start plugging away at my book.
Well, here's the thing. I say I'm a full-time indie author, which means a part of the day is writing. Then the rest is advertising, marketing, all the other things. Yeah. Stuff that you're doing too, but yes, it's only part of the day. Let me not give anybody false hope. With being an indie author, you don't write as much as you really want to. You do a lot more marketing. Of
course, it's half and half.
Exactly.
Yeah, I get it. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. Well, let me ask, because where the hour is going to start picking up, it's always around this particular mark. A couple questions that, if this platform's nice, usually it is, sometimes it's had glitches, I'll repurpose this video on my YouTube channel and put all your content and contact information down below for people who hopefully discover you in the future, as well as anybody who wants to reference our little chat tonight. But first question that I like to ask, and we've kind of touched on this a little bit, is outside of Book Talk, where can people find and follow you? What are your other socials? Do you have a newsletter? Do you have a website? That kind of thing.
Sure. Website's laimo.com, Laimo.com. Facebook is pretty active. I do a lot of promoting there. It's Michael Laimo. Same with, I kind of just found Instagram when I found TikTok, and I use Instagram more to entertain myself with the reels than I use it for to promote my work. But I do the best I can. I still post about it there. So it's Michael Laimo on Instagram. And yeah, it's pretty, I'm on Twitter, Blue Sky, but I really don't use those that much. It's really TikTok. TikTok's my go-to. It's my number one.
This community is great.
Yeah, it's a very powerful tool, especially for authors. I am so glad I found it. I'm so glad it exists, and I hope that I can continue to capitalize with it for as long as I'm writing.
Yeah, because it, like as you said, it is a powerful tool. It allows people, and was one of the forefront people, to be able to offer you functions like the bookshop, which has open worlds for authors who may not have the capability to have their own shop outside of that. And so, having your book talk shop and being able to sell direct and have signed copies out there is just another kind of means which not only cuts out some more of those kind of like middlemen but makes it more personal, but it's that direct link between you and your reader, which we all like.
Yes, yeah. It's, book talk, it's funny. Well, I was talking about Deep into Darkness before. I mentioned this book has sold 30,000 copies back in the day. It was made into a movie that's currently streaming on Amazon.
That's great.
Right? And I've still made with Misconnection, and I'm really not doing this for the money. I have a day job. The money, I call it Costco money, but I've officially made more money with Misconnection than I have with Deep into Darkness. And I certainly have not. So I've only sold probably about 3,000 copies of that as opposed to 30,000. But yeah, I was getting maybe 10 cents a book back in the day, from leisure. So it's very different. But you said selling on Book Talk is, it's become profitable. It's almost 1,000 books. I didn't imagine that ever happening. So yeah, I'm happy with it. Very happy.
That's good.
Yeah.
So actually, let me ask you, because you're probably the first author that I know of that has had a book have the chance to be turned into a movie. And you said you've actually had 2 of these, correct? Mm-hmm. So how was that experience, being able to see something you wrote and see then it being portrayed in a kind of more of a visual cinematic version?
It was great. The greatest thing ever. Because I'm on set, and there are 50, 60 people working on a movie that they wouldn't be here if I didn't write it. It's really wild feeling. It's very surreal. Deep into Darkness is a lot more loyal to the book than Dead Souls is. Dead Souls, they left a lot out. But Dead Souls is also a very complex book. There are 2 timelines, and how do you sell 2 stories in one movie? And they did one story with a series of flashbacks.
Oh, gotcha.
So yeah, but what a great feeling. Yeah, a lot of fun. I was on set for both movies it's not something you want to be on set for the entire time, because there's a lot of downtime.
Yeah.
A lot of sitting around and waiting, and a lot of reshoots, and it's cool here and there. But I remember freezing and we were doing Deep into Darkness, where it was nighttime scenes, and it was like in March in Connecticut. It was freezing.
Oh no.
And I felt bad for one actor. It was a shirtless scene. He's running out of the house in a shirtless, scene, and then there was another one where the woman was lying on the cold concrete, and it was freezing, and she was supposed to be unalived, and she was trembling. She couldn't stop trembling. So so production was like finding blankets everywhere they can, and wrapping her in lots of blankets and getting her warm for this one scene. And it was a lot of stuff like that. A lot of like just waiting around and trying to get things right, repeating things over and over. And I did 2 cameos, one in each movie too.
That's great. I love that. Yeah. That is phenomenal. And I have a question pop up for you specifically. Were you involved with writing the screenplay versions of your books, or did someone else take control of those things?
No, the production company had an on-staff screenwriter. He wrote the screenplays, sent them to me, and then I went through them and did my suggestions slash edits, and they took everything into account that I suggested. And I remember once, because NBC financed both movies, so for the first movie, Dead Souls, we went up to like the NBC building in New York City, went all the way up to the big boardroom with the big table and everything. I'm sitting with the NBC executives, and and they're like asking me questions. They keep firing questions at me about the story, about what is what does he do in this scene? How can we do this? How do we film this? How does there's a scene where the minister crucifies himself onto a cross. It's a horror novel. It's a horror movie. And he's like, how does he do that? And I said, he already has the nails coming through. They like, how does he hammer the nails and so things like that, little questions like that. We spent hours going through stuff like that. So I was very involved with the pre-production of the movies.
That's always nice to hear, because that's one question I know people who haven't had that experience wonder is how involved are authors in the media that is made off of their work. And so it's always nice to hear when people not only have the ability to be involved, but are actually listened to.
Sure. I was I was ready to go along with anything they wanted. They're making a movie out of my book. All right, go for it. Do whatever you want. I was very happy. There was some changes, like each movie has a character that was not in the book.
Okay.
So I wasn't really thrilled with the first one, with the extra character they added in Dead Souls. It kind of really changed things around a lot. It made the movie very different from the book.
I gotcha.
In Deep in the Darkness, they added an extra character for good reason, because the actor that was playing the old man, Dean Stockwell, he was very frail, and he couldn't some of the things that he did in the book he couldn't do in real life, so they gave him a grandson, and the grandson took care of some of those things.
That does make sense. And again, that stuff is I find personally fascinating. I know other people will surely find that fascinating as well. I see the lights popping up right now, but that is really phenomenal. And when it comes to your new books, now that you're kind of branching into the thriller genre, and thriller, like you said, there's a huge community that support that. Do you have, I'm sure you do, but do you have in mind, like, if your book was turned into a movie, or because now you're writing a series, a show, who you would want to cast or direct, or do you have that? You don't have to say who, but like,
yeah, we talk about that in my lives. A couple people made videos. They're in my reposts of who they want to play all the parts in the book.
Yes.
It would make a great show. There's so many twists and turns in the first book. There are so many different cool ways to end an episode because of those twists and turns. I still have faith. I still have faith that it'll end up in someone's hands. So I've had 4 people come into my lives to tell me that Pauly Shore, the comedian, the actor, was talking about my books during his lives. I mean, yeah, and I'm like, first person told me, I didn't believe it. Then somebody else came in. I said, are you the same person that told me the first time? And they're like, no. But then recently I've had 2 more people tell me the same thing. So I'm like, there's got to be some truth to that. But I'm so curious. I need confirmation now. So, so that was kind of cool. But a lot of people talking about who they would want to play. I mean, I don't know. I really don't know. I don't want to go there. I don't want to ruin it for anybody.
Fair. I like that. Fair. But it is something just fun. I'm pretty sure every author thinks about it at some point, because you love your book and you believe in the books you write, or you hopefully do, that you're wondering what if, and if, who would do this, or who would do that, or who would be the director, and who would be the production company, et cetera, so on. So it's fun things to think about. Sure. But let me also ask another question that I always try to do is, where can people get your book? We've mentioned before that you have your own book talk shop, outside of getting a signed copy, which always is better for the author if you buy direct. Outside of your book talk shop, where are your books found, and in what formats?
Okay, Amazon, ebook, audiobook, and paperbacks across the board for all my books. Independent booksellers, libraries. My old paperbacks, like those old leisure books, they were, tens of thousands of those printed, so they're everywhere. Every used bookstore I go into, I always find at least one of my books, which is kind of cool. But for the most part, the best place to get my stuff, like I said, TikTok Shop or Amazon.
Have you ever thought about having a pen with you and you go into a used bookstore and sign your name and your book?
I used to do it in Barnes and Nobles. I used to see I remember when my first book came out, I would walk into a Barnes and Noble and there was a guy literally reading my book next to the turnstile. I was like, "What do you think of the book?" And he thought, he was like looking at me like, "Who are you? Get away from me." And I was like, I wrote it. I said, "I wrote the book. Look at the picture in the back." And he looks at the picture, he looks at me and he goes, "Cool." That was it. He went right back to read the book. I was like, "All right, nice to meet you." That was my one experience there. But no, I don't necessarily travel with a pen. Only to the cons when I know I'm going to be signing books.
Hey, that's a good way to bring people to you. Say, hey, if you want a signed copy, and if you're not going to buy through the TikTok Shop, come and see me at here and here, and you can come and find me.
Sure.
But and if you have those big fans who have bought your book and now they want it signed, some will travel.
I hope so. Yeah, why not? It's funny. I did. So I work for my day job is a horror collectibles company. So I work in horror as well, and we do fan conventions. Mm-hmm. So we were doing every time I do fan conventions, at least one of my old writer friends is there, selling his books. So I was doing one, and there was a writer there. He was with Adam Caesar. His name was Scott Cole, and I had never met him before. I was like, "How you doing? Nice to meet you." He goes, "Yeah." He goes, "You're the Deep in the Darkness guy, right?" And I was like, "Yeah." The next day, he came back with his book and asked me to sign it. Yeah, I was like, "That's cool." I said, "You actually had a copy?" He's like, "Yep, I had it at home."
Wow, that's great.
I decided to start Misconnection tonight, and I'm on chapter 6. Now, do you see my...
I think the way it works, and I say I think because I've always tried to figure this out, is that if someone's following both of us, I see them both. If there's, and I'm trying to keep try to make note of any comments that come up that are bookish related, because the vice versa could happen, whereas I see something that you don't, or you see something I don't. So if you do see anything that I feels like I'm missing, feel free to make note of it, because I was
wondering because you were commenting and I didn't see it on my end, so that's probably how that works. But someone just wrote, "I decided to start Misconnection tonight, and I'm on chapter 6. It is good."
See, I love that. That's great. Mm-hmm. And absolutely. So when it comes to let's go back to your horror for a second. When it comes to your horror, there are so many different subgenres in horror. The same thing goes with thriller too. Did you have a particular kind of, were you focused on the monster side of things, or, the dark side of humanity? What horror did you kind of write, and did you have a favorite subgenre?
Sure. So I've written and published over 120 short stories in my career, and I've hit every subgenre out there. I've tried it all. But I seem to lean more towards supernatural horror with creatures. I like creating creatures. That's what Deep in the Darkness is, a creature feature. Let's see. We got. So I've tried different things with my novels too. The Demonologist. This is a demonic possession story. We got Sleepwalker. Sleepwalker is a paranormal thriller. So I've tried lots of different things. But same with my short fiction. I'd say 50 to 60% of my short stories are creature stories, monster stories, giant slugs, things like that, vampires, Gila monsters. I've tried just different things, different stories with different types of creatures, and I had a lot of fun with it. And then a little bit of psychological horror, some of my short stories for sure. But most of it's supernatural. I think I did a couple like Dead Souls and Fires Rising are both religious themed horror novels. Fires Rising takes place inside an abandoned church in New York City. So that's I tried to because there wasn't, ever since The Exorcist, nobody really focused on religious themed horror. So I thought I'd try that. And I did the 2 books. And it worked out with Dead Souls. It was made into a movie.
That's great. And it is, how do you like writing about locations near you? Because it sounds like you've mentioned a couple that are kind of based up in the Northeast and specifically around the New York area. Do you write about locations that you've physically been in, or do you kind of create locations that are kind of based off of places that you've enjoyed?
So yeah, with Misconnection, it takes place in New York City, and I worked in New York City for 21 years in the Garment Center. That's what my guy does. He works in the Garment Center. We had the same job. We went, all the tertiary characters that he meets in his travels are all people that I've met in my real life or memories that I've had from working in the city. So I've done that. Sleepwalker takes place in Long Island, but it's not a town in Long Island in upstate New York. And then Deep into Darkness, Dead Souls, New England, because I'm Stephen King influence. For sure, I wanted to write. He made New England spooky, and so I wanted to try that too. It made sense. But yeah, they always say write what you know, and nothing is more true than that. Especially when it comes to places and different types of people, describing people and so forth. Write what you know, places you know. It's hard writing about places I've never been to. And when that happens, you got to research it. And I'm doing that right now with the second book.
Well, I think it was Neil. I'm pretty sure it was Neil Gaiman when he was writing his book American Gods. He only wanted to write about locations that he's been to, but he wanted to write about certain locations. So he did a road trip across the U.S. so he could make sure he hit all the locations and physically experienced the areas which he was intending to write about in his work. So I thought that was kind of
Stephen King did it with the JFK book. I forgot the title, 11/16/63 or something. And he spent a week in Texas going to all the different spots, the places where he lived, everything about it, where the shooter lived at the time, things like that.
See, I one of my series is a retelling of Nordic myth, but I heavily deep dived in the research of the people during the Viking era, and of course the mythos that pertained to that area as well. And I've always kind of talked about it being like, wouldn't it be fun to do a trip over to Scandinavia and explore some locations that were heavily inspired and influenced, obviously the peoples who live there, and then thus my writing.
Yeah, that would be fun.
That would be fun.
Yeah, no doubt. That's a big investment. That's the only thing.
Yeah, so that haven't done it yet, but it is on my bucket list. And I'm
Hey, a big book deal publisher will happily pay for it.
That would be, I'm all for that. So let me ask you, as well as everybody else who's still on and chiming in, is there any question that you had that you wanted to ask but you haven't had a chance to ask, or any topic that you wanted to cover that we haven't covered so far? This is that perfect time.
Yes, I would like to know about your work. I want to, tell me about your books. I kind of did like a quick, I didn't do a deep dive, but I kind of did a cursory glance at your books on Amazon, and I want to hear you talk about it a little bit. So it looks like you have a series of like 4 books. Is that correct?
I have 3 different series at the moment, and each of them are not related to the other. Going back to that concept of second world, high fantasy authors, and you have to create your own world universes, or in one case, multiverse. Sorry, I have to do this little slide thing because that's going to have to match up perfectly. Saying the hour. Okay, we're back. Didn't want it to shut off the live a little early. But right now I have 3 different series. 2 of them are complete. 1 is still in the works, and I have other new projects coming down the road next year. But I guess the first one I'll talk about will be The Guardian Speaker. This is a dark retelling of Nordic myth. It's essentially a Viking fantasy aimed at mature readers, so more for the adult age. And being a novella series, there are 16 in all. It is a deep dive in the Nordic myth. You're going to explore all 9 realms in and around Yggdrasil, the World Tree. And we start with some really obscure myth with the concept of Fulgir, animal-shaped guardian spirits. And I hold off all the big flashy characters like Thor and Loki and Freya and Odin until the very end, because everybody expects them up front, so I kind of made sure my readers had to wait. Purposely waited out. But beyond that one, I have my debut series, which is the Incarn Saga series. I guess I could pull them out. I just thought about that. Like, they're behind me. They're going to be backwards in mine. But the first one I ever wrote was Isara's Claws. It's the first book of the Incarn Saga series, 4 books in all. It's a new adult, war-based shifter fantasy set in a kingdom on the verge of war, where humans and shapeshifters have to decide if they can put aside their differences in order to fend off a bigger threat. And as the story goes on, there's a lot of prophecy and the questions of various deities and do they interact with humanity and how so. So that is that series, and that's the one that's gotten me on bestsellers lists and been international bestsellers, was that series. Right now, I'm about to gear up for a Kickstarter launching next month to launch my 5th book of the Jed Chronicles series, which starts with the 12 tasks, and this is my young adult isekai, or portal fantasy, set in a magical multiverse, and it's essentially my love letter of growing up in the 90s. So I have influences, looking back, I've realized I have influences from everything from shows like Yu-Gi-Oh! And movies like Dragonheart and Stargate SG-1, but it's it's a lot of fun. It's written based on my alter ego that I developed growing up with my sister, and idea of the character awakens on a world not on Earth, told that she may be the potential prophesized heroine, has to complete 12 tasks on each of the magic worlds. If she completes them all successfully and thus survives, then that means there is a cosmic war going to occur that could destroy existence itself. And so there's the pros and cons of being proved if she is this prophesized heroine, and then the story goes on from there.
So I have a few questions for you. Now we're going to switch it around a little bit before we go. How many books in total have you published?
I have published 8 full lengths and 16 novellas at this moment.
Wow. Yeah. That's a lot. That's a lot.
It's a number.
Yeah, it is. That's fantastic. Now, have you tried to work with literary agents? I mean, was this just something that you've just done on your own? You haven't really gone that route, or is it something that you've really tried for, like me, and just haven't found any real success with it?
The first book, Isara's Claws, The Lady in the Blue, I did go through because everybody's told originally, at least they used to be, you have to go through a publishing house. And so I did try to query that one, but I know, looking backwards, I didn't know what I was doing with the querying aspect, really. So I do think that part of it was just a poor pitch, and not knowing that system, because it's an art form in itself to figure out how to query correctly in many ways. But once I started self-publishing and realizing I can do this on my own and be decently successful that way, that's why a lot of my work since then I just kind of kept with indie. When I was launching my young adult series, I tried to query again and did get interest. The problem was, for YA, they're very specific about the size of the book, and you have to stay within parameters. And my book was well over that word count, and they said, if you can cut a third out of it, we'll talk. And I said, no, thank you.
Yeah,
right. I didn't want to cut that out. So I do think if I chose to go back and query going forward, I probably could do that whole process better and get some interest, but I'm also pretty confident with self-publishing that I'm not necessarily worried that that is the way I need to go.
Okay, cool. All right, and then I guess last question is, for someone like me who's never read you before, what would be your suggestion for a first book to try?
Well, my answer always is, what is your interest? And when people say they don't really care, I usually point them to my Viking series, one being the fact that they're novellas. I publish them in sets of 4 in physical prints. So this is a bundle of 4. I have picked out 5 through 8 there. But because they're novellas, you can read them in between doing other things and other on projects. And it also, because that one is geared more for a mature audience, a lot of my people who are interested that are, not necessarily teenagers, I would say that would be probably the way to go, because that would give you a good taste of a lot of my dark fantasy, and I do have future dark fantasy series or in the works right now.
All right, cool. All right, well, I'm definitely going to get one. And yeah, I look forward to reading it.
Well, hopefully you enjoy it, and welcome to the side of dark second world fantasy.
Yeah, no, I've made a point to support a lot of independent writers here because me being one, I've seen such incredible support from the book talk community, and I like to give it back.
Well, thank you. And I do the same thing all the time is if I sell them enough, then I can turn around and start buying more or supporting fellow authors, Kickstarter launch or stuff like that. Because, you know, it is part of giving back to the community. And it is true, the more you read, the more you learn. You can pick up a lot on craft and just by purely reading. And I do see a couple comments popping up on my side. As far as me, yes, all I write is fantasy. And he writes a mix right now of thrillers and horror books, depending on which ones you read. I'm just making sure I didn't miss anything. I think that's, and then, yes, okay. That one. Support, yes, support Misconnection, the latest one, and the sequel will be coming out hopefully as soon as possible. So maybe even towards the end of the year, as you mentioned. At least your publisher sounds like they're drooling, as you mentioned earlier.
Yeah, they want to get it out. They definitely do. They even we're doing 3 more books too. The last 3 that they haven't done yet of mine. So so over the course of the next 6 months or so, I'm going to have 3 more books out, just reprints. So I'm looking forward to getting my older work into new readers' hands.
I love that, and I wish you the best because it sounds like you're doing well here now that you've kind of started to pick up your groove and find your community. And it also sounds like you have a variety of followers that are ready and rearing to support you going forward. So that's what we all like.
We definitely do.
Now, if anybody else has a final question or comment, this is that chance. And if not, I will be starting to say, thank you so much for hanging out with me this past hour. It was lovely to meet you and hear about all your work. I love talking with authors who do various genres because even though I'm all fantasy, I branch dramatically within fantasy. And it always inspires me when I see other authors doing well when they're jumping genres because that's hard to do.
It is. It was a challenge. I'm glad I did it though.
I love it. And I will look forward to talking with you maybe in the future if you ever so choose want to jump on one of these again. I do these weekly and do plan them in advance. I'm a planner, but I would love to talk with you again in the future.
Thank you, Katharine. It was a real pleasure. I'm so happy you invited me. I had a blast. Thank you so much.
And thank you for everybody listening. And I hope all you have a wonderful week. Bye, everyone.